Welcome to the Calgary Environmental Roundtable Municipal Election Campaign, led by the Gravity Well podcast with me, Jenny Yeremy. The Calgary Environmental Roundtable, or CERT for short, is a nonpartisan coalition of environmental and climate organizations working together to ensure that water, nature, and climate are front of mind and that our members have an ongoing opportunity to shape the future of our city. Through our candidate questionnaire, mayoral and ward podcast panels, and voter engagement tool, CERT is connecting residents with candidates, elevating environmental priorities, and empowering Calgarians to make informed choices at the ballot box. Municipal decisions directly affect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the communities we live in. As Calgary continues to grow, we must prioritize clean water, biodiversity, and bold climate action to ensure a safe and thriving city for generations to come. Our list of supporters is growing. Reach out to add your organization. Send your candidates and network the CERT questionnaire. Encourage their participation and ongoing relationship building with their representatives. Remember to follow, like, subscribe, and share the Gravity Well podcast. Together we can build a resilient, healthy, and sustainable city for all Calgarians. Okay, good day everyone. I am excited to introduce 3 of your Ward 7 candidates today. I have Anthony Askew, David Barrett, and Mike Atkinson in the studio. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. So the Calgary Environmental Roundtable is a climate, environment, and common good focus group of groups working together to ensure that water, nature, and biodiversity are front of mind, and that our members have an opportunity to shape the future of our city. Municipal decisions directly affect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the communities that we live in. The goal of this campaign is to connect you with your candidates, elevating environmental and common good priorities, and empowering you to make good choices at the ballot box and beyond. So thank you to Jeremy Farkas for Mayor, Ali Unwala for Ward 1, Jennifer Wyness and Trevor Kavanagh for Ward 2, Andrew Yule and Jasprina Jahal for Ward 3, and DJ Kelly for Ward 4 for your participation. You can check out their conversations with me on the Gravity Well with Jenny Yeremy YouTube page, as well as on my website. The links will be included in the live chat. Also, please check out the conversation I had with Heather McKenzie of Solar Alberta in absence of a Ward 6 conversation. Please remember that if you live in Ward 5 or Ward 6, there are several candidates who have not taken the opportunity to answer the CERT questions. CERT's grateful for the opportunity to highlight candidates' vision of a green future for Calgary in these exclusive and panel interviews, and we're excited to hear from Ward 7 today. This campaign will be most successful because of you and your support. We have officially have responses from 50% of the candidates in this year's campaign, but we need more, and in order to do that, we need you to participate. So please use this QR code in the top corner of the screen to get your candidates to participate. Your impact will be amplified when you share it with your community and your network. Please note that candidates hold a range of environmental positions, priorities, and objectives, and this is not a debate, it's a forum. Positions taken by participants either individually or collectively do not necessarily represent those of the Calgary Environmental Roundtable as a whole. Again, CERT and this campaign do not endorse or recommend any candidates or political parties. I, however, will do my best to offer some personal endorsements at the end of this series. Lastly, please remember to like and subscribe and follow the Gravity Well podcast. Together, we can build a resilient and healthy, sustainable city for all Calgarians. Okay, let's get to your guests. So first of all, I'm going to invite Anthony on the stage. Did I say your last name correctly, Anthony? Is it Anthony Askew?
Yeah, it's Anthony Askew.
Thank you. Okay, so Anthony has lived in Calgary since 2016. He started as a successful janitorial and property management business in Ward 7 in 2021. Anthony has a wide array of professional experiences, from being the Director of Talent Relations for some Calgary's largest cleaning companies to being the Director of Online Operations for Canada's largest private post-secondary institution, CDI College. This is his current role as owner of and CEO of Wild Rose Property Solutions. Anthony's an active member of the community and is Vice President of the Progressive Group for Independent Businesses, Calgary's largest small business and taxpayer organization. He has also helped get many members elected for the Conservative Party. The Conservative MP Jasra Singh Halan. Anthony's a strong supporter of the MP Greg McLean and was a delegate for the United Conservative Party for your area in 2024. He believes in infrastructure over ideology, responsible spending, safe streets, lower taxes, buying local. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Okay, next I am welcoming David Barrett. Sorry, I lost my spot here. David is a research scientist and teacher at the University of Calgary, where he focuses his work on better understanding the relationships between human and aquatic ecosystems. This work has helped him working across Alberta and Western Canada and in the Arctic. All of his research is grounded in people-environment interactions and community impacts. He delivers courses ranging from the impacts of climate change to human society interactions, statistics, and meteorology. David has served as a community association president, planning committee director, and VP external of a community association in Calgary. He also sits on the established area's Growth and Change Committee and has been directly involved in a range of different community city committees. He also currently sits on the boards of Sustainable Calgary and Calgary River Valleys, which is where I had the brief opportunity to work with David myself. David is focused on the relationships between people, the environment, and water. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And lastly, I did that backwards. Sorry. Adding you back on and bringing Mike on the stage. Hello, Mike. So Mike Atkinson has been involved in civic advocacy for the past 10 years, including serving on the city's Funding and Finance Committee for Established Areas Growth and Change Strategy, and is his local Ward 7 Community Association Planning and Committee, on the Ward 7 Community Association's Planning and Development Committee. Recently, he worked as a service design lead at the Calgary Public Library, listening to community needs, working with partner organizations, and developing new initiatives in the area of entrepreneurship and adult creativity, technology access, and civic engagement. Two initiatives to highlight is Plan My Vote tool that he created, which allowed over 10,000 Calgarians to create custom voting plans, and the prototype for Skyview, the library's newest branch focused on delivering technology services in underserved areas of the city. Before this, Mike led the team at CJSW 90.9 FM in Calgary, supporting over 250 volunteers. He learned an incredible value of having a shared vision while allowing individuals to thrive. Welcome, Mike. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah, it's great.
Great. Yeah, I'm really excited to have 3 members from Ward 7. You guys have, your community should feel very grateful that you have such active people running. So thank you for doing that. Okay, let's get going. So I'm going to start with the first question and we'll go kind of clockwise this way. So Anthony, you can answer first. Calgary's climate strategy outlines 5-year goals to reduce energy poverty and utility costs, creating clean economy jobs, improving public health, building more equitable climate resilient communities. If elected, how will you work to achieve these outcomes for Calgarians? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, obviously we want to see the environment do well. We want Calgary to be a part of that here. I don't want to be a police force to businesses to mandate changes. I would like to give incentives to businesses to enact better environmental policies there, whether that's give them tax breaks on their property taxes or what have you there. We need to look at incentivizing innovative ways to get businesses in a better direction there. I would like to focus on waste management, making sure that we're efficient in that part as well too. And I do want to have at least for me an impact on reducing food waste, right? So I want to see if we could maybe support more local businesses and charities in terms of getting food kitchens up there, so we're not wasting food so much, right? Whether that's reduction in waste and also improving our recycling programs and protecting green spaces as well too, right? So something that we can do municipality wise is protect our parks and invest in local businesses that are doing food operations so food doesn't go to waste, and incentivize businesses and corporations to go green, right? I don't want to do any sort of forced mandates, but I would love to give them help and give them sort of incentives to do that.
Excellent. Mike, you're next, please.
Great. Yeah. We need to sort of see our role with affordability, climate, public health. All of these things are actually very entangled and tied into one another. We can actually be tackling, say, affordability at the same time as we're working on climate initiatives and climate resiliency for things like providing energy at lower cost by using renewable energy sources. We can be doing things like greening our natural spaces, whether that's rewilding them, planting more trees. These add to the vibrancy and the livability of people in the inner city. They do things like improve mental health and just general overall quality of life for people in Calgary. So we need to make sure that we're investing in these things. This is a long-term investment that pays off for the people that live in our city. And if we start the ball early, the earlier we get things going, the longer we'll have the payoff for all these results.
Excellent. David, you're next, please.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I might take up my full 2 minutes because this is an area that I love talking about, right? I at the University of Calgary, one thing that I teach about is climate science, right? We talk about this a lot, and we've gone through the Calgary's climate strategy at length in those courses. So I want to champion both a proactive and integrated approach to looking at our climate strategy. We have a lot of really good initiatives that are already underway. So I'll push back. I'll say that the ball is already rolling. I think we need to make sure that we are continuing to prioritize that. A couple of ways that we can do that is trying to tackle energy poverty and address utility costs. So energy retrofits are a huge thing. The city can lead the way with its affordable housing stock and with its civic-owned buildings, really pushing to kind of push those energy retrofits to make them more efficient, improve insulation, windows, heating systems, that kind of thing. And then collaboratively with the Alberta municipalities as well, we can push for those clean energy improvement programs and the funding that goes along with that. The provincial government used to have the Energy Efficiency Alberta arm, which was really doing some excellent work and leading the way on some of those retrofit initiatives. Unfortunately, that was shuttered a while back when there was a government change. I think we need to push to make the fiscal case for it, that it does help address energy poverty and affordability. We can create clean energy jobs out, like we have so much opportunity here in Calgary. We've got a lot of the expertise, we've got the engineers, we've got the brains that can really, if we can empower them, if we can create that infrastructure that then helps these companies really take off. And again, alongside the province, right? Because we do need, from a regulatory sense, we need to work with them to address some of the regulatory challenges for clean energy, and really kind of leveraging that. And we should be a leader. We are a leader in many ways in solar. We have some of the best solar companies in Alberta, in the country, here in Calgary. They're doing incredible work. They're being held back by some other regulations, but if we can really as a city, really push to enable them to take off even more. Then, addressing the public health aspect, we need to invest in transportation and transit and how we build our cities. How we build, how we grow our city really is at the core of how we're going to address climate, right? The two are so interwoven that you can't separate them. And then, trying to make sure that this is done equitably. So we have seen, if you look at the tree equity that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later, but if we look at tree equity, it's not equal across the city. We cannot continue to be inequitable in the way that we address climate. We need to be looking at who is being impacted and how we can best address that. Whether that's in Ward 7 or not, that needs to be viewed through that equity lens. And then one last thing I'll add here, just in the interest of keeping it concise, reporting, right? We have taken huge steps in about, 5 years ago, I think it was, previous Ward 7 Councillor Drew Farrell really pushed the climate reporting dashboard and metrics that came online about 4 years ago. We need to be making sure that that is both up to date and that we're actually using it. We're actually using it to hold business units to account, to say, how are you meeting the goals of Calgary's climate strategy? So reporting is a really big thing.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to do my best to summarize. So Anthony, I heard from you that you want to focus on waste management, reducing food waste, and making sure that, reducing waste and using parks to make sure that we're also upping our climate resiliency as well. From you, Mike, I heard that you want also that public health and affordability are linked, and that's all related to climate, that energy can be, like, reducing energy is also helpful for health. Energy costs through clean energy is helpful for improving mental health and wellness, and also to make sure that green spaces are prioritized as well. And then from you, David, that you've spent a lot of time with the climate strategy for Calgary with the U of C. You want to see that plan being realized through that reporting, that you want to make sure that the public transport is a big part of this. How we move around the city is going to be really important, being both proactive and integrative in our approaches. And I'll stop there. Okay, so we're going to go the other way. So David, you can lead this one off. How will you ensure that new community developments and redevelopments in Calgary protect our watersheds, rivers and creek valleys, wetlands, and the wildlife and urban biodiversity who depend on these ecosystems? Thank you.
Yeah, again, this is something that I am so deeply invested in, right, with my research focused in the Bow River. We have sprawled out as a city. We have eaten into these natural areas. We have taken over the agricultural areas at the edge of the city as well. We have consistently grown outwards. The most recent, obvious one was Ricardo Ranch, right? We've eaten and we've gone into some of the only remaining heron rooks, in the region, right? We have to try to curb that sprawl while also working within our existing footprint. We're going to grow, so we have to make sure that we're doing that in a smart way. We have an absolute crack team at the City of Calgary working in watershed protection. The watershed stewardship group, at the city is incredible. I've worked very closely with a lot of them. I think we should be including watershed protection metrics in our land use planning. So really prioritizing protecting those riparian areas, protecting sensitive areas, and trying to intercept, say, rainfall and runoff before it reaches our natural systems, so that it has a time to clean and settle before it enters the systems. Speaking of wetlands, new developments do have to have pretty much self-contained stormwater management. I would like to see us really look a little bit further and say any wetland loss that we have, we need to make sure, this is a provincial responsibility, but make sure that those are being compensated properly. Ideally, we're not sprawling out and eating into those wetlands to begin with, but making sure that those are protected. And then prioritizing the use of green infrastructure is absolutely critical. There's a good report that just came out from IASD recently on the value of green infrastructure. So whether that's bioswales, stormwater ponds, rain gardens, all these things that help to limit the contamination of our waterways, and it promotes natural areas for good for habitat, good for again water quality, and preventing damage and runoff elsewhere. Sorry, that's the look that I'm getting the hook. So
yeah, it's okay. Mike, you're next, please.
Great. Yeah. So our water systems really have shaped the landscape of where we live, right? Both in terms of, yes, the river valley sort of being the heart, but also our natural sort of valley spaces that run through our communities. Everything from catchment areas like Confederation Park on the northern boundary of Ward 7. You've got natural spaces that have been left naturalized. We've got spaces such as even the new Tuxedo Park rain catchment system, which has been developed to help with flooding within the community, but becomes a soccer field, a soccer pitch when we're not in sort of flood or rainy season. So we can create these kinds of either man-made infrastructures, which can help with this water catchment, allowing runoff to be done in a slower fashion and not bring sort of the hazards of flooding and the hazards of contamination into our rivers. And you can even look at these modern forms of renaturalization, things like the Ralph Klein Park. Ralph Klein Park is a beautiful example of a way that humans can sort of look at a space that has been, taken over and inhabited to sort of bring back a natural element that is now serving natural needs while also becoming a place that humans can come and enjoy and create that connection. Because I think that that's a really key part. If we want to get people on side with these kinds of changes and the investments needed to make these kinds of changes, there has to be that connection to the value of these places. And so by creating beautiful places that people can come and enjoy that also serve this dual purpose of environmental responsibility, we get a win on both sides.
Wonderful. Anthony, you're next, please.
Yeah, I don't think this is a zero-sum game where it's one way 100% or the other way it's zero. I think the last point that Mike had is the correct kind of way to look at it, where it's like you can build responsibly man-made structures to help alleviate possible environmental hazards like flooding, but also promote more social and community gathering spirit, right? Whether it's parks or whether it's just a nice naturalization or more forestry here, and we can plant that manually for sure. I think you can do both, right? Like Calgary's going to grow. We have to come to grips with that. Like more people are going to come in. We are eventually going to expand. We can't keep densifying everything. Eventually, we're going to have to grow outwards. That is the inevitability of any city that is growing, and that is a blessing because that means people want to come here, right? That means that people are interested in our economy, in our resources, and what we have to offer them. And we have to make sure that when we are building structures, on the environment, that we are doing so responsibly, with growth in mind, but also with the environment in mind as well too. I want to preserve as many parks as I can. I want to do what I can to make Calgary look beautiful with trees and grass areas that are natural, stuff like that. But we also have to be mindful of the amount of people that are going to come in and practical uses for those areas as well too.
Excellent. Okay, so from David, I heard that we do need to think about the sprawl, the footprint that we have created in Calgary, and make sure that we try to work within our existing footprint, understanding that is taking up key natural infrastructure that allows us to thrive here, that we need to make sure that we're allowing water to slow and settle, and using those stewardship metrics from the Watershed Stewardship Planning Committee, making sure that wetlands are restored in this province and that green infrastructure is a front of mind in the work that we do. From Mike, I heard that water systems management is the basis for life here, and we are in a river valley, and it's not just about that, but those catchment areas and those parks and as well, and that we need to think about the hazards of flooding, contamination and excess water runoff, and making sure that we have those beautiful spaces that will also help mitigate those challenges, and making sure that we're allowing people to understand the connection that we do have with nature and valuing it, making sure that we value that component as well. And from you, Anthony, I heard that this isn't a zero-sum game, that we need to think about growth and the environment at the same time and try to create those social spaces as we develop. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one, and I'll let you go first this time, Mike. So will you commit to dedicating budget dollars towards protecting Calgary's biodiversity, improving wildlife safety in our urban environments, including through measures such as enforcing bird-friendly building standards, retrofitting existing structures, and supporting safe wildlife corridors? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. This is, I think, really important. And we actually have a great opportunity here in actually a lot of our smaller green spaces that are dotted across the city, right? Wildlife corridors within our city, the ability for birds and insects and even some of the small, bunnies that hop around in our neighborhoods, giving them naturalized spaces to sort of travel between, whether that is the larger spaces like our parks, but even these sides of the roadways where we have, where we've currently got a green space where we're mowing the grass, by allowing it to be naturalized, or actually investing in that naturalization by bringing in small forests, like things like the Miyawaki forests, where we do high density plantings to create these little pocket forests that are dotted around the city. These can create these sanctuaries that allow for our animal neighbors to live a happy life within the city too. So how do we just take advantage of the opportunity of, we built a city that has sort of spread out and we have these greenways. How do we best utilize those to provide these sort of natural spaces? And the other side of it is stop sort of treating trees and this sort of thing like an afterthought. Treat them like infrastructure, treat them like something that we need to be building in right from the start. At this point, now we need to fix and bring it in these ways that supports a natural ecology by giving connectivity through our urban landscape. Protect the trees, bring in more. And the other side of it is when you're thinking about things like birds and the habitat that they need, by actually having it not that a single tree is standing in a park and then another tree 5 feet away. When one of those trees dies, that tree then becomes something that people point to and we need to cut down. In a forest, dead trees provide natural habitat for birds, for insects, and these, the whole ecology. And so by creating more of an actual ecosystem there, we can let the dead wood and the leaves that have fallen and, the grasses that have died stay there and rejuvenate and provide life to the other life that is in that place.
Wonderful. Anthony, you're next, please.
Yeah, thank you. I want to make sure that we're doing what we can to help out, especially with our local wildlife there. I don't want to do any sort of forced mandates. That's not what my policy or my party's policy is. I do want to give incentives, very good incentives for businesses to do that, especially if your business is located in an area where it could, affect some change positively for the environment or local wildlife. I would love to give them some benefits there to make those changes. This is actually also a really good point of why I'm against kind of the concept of retrofitting as well too, because Mike is right in a sense that like we have to build better when we're doing our construction, and we have to have multiple things in mind, whether that's parking, whether that's the environment, whether that's utilities, etc. And it's tougher to do all of that when you're just retrofitting, because you're kind of stuck in the confines of what's already built, and you can't really add too much to it there. To me, I think a better response would be to tear down completely and rebuild from the bottom up, so we can add all the things that we need, whether that's ample spaces for parking, whether that's structures to help with the environment and wildlife. We can do those things responsibly and with more freedom if we were to tear down and rebuild versus just retrofitting currently, because then we're kind of stuck in what we have confine wise, right? So I do, and my party also is in support of giving incentives and support to companies that want to pursue the initiatives, but we don't want to force a mandate on any of those companies to do that as well too.
Okay, David, you're next, please.
Awesome, thanks. I'll just start, and I recognize we're not doing a debate, but I would say that we do have requirements for tree planting for natural and in new developments. The fact that they may not be successful is something that we need to address, but they are already built into our development process. So we need to hold developers to account to make sure that when these are getting redeveloped, whether we're building new, whether we're retrofitting, that we are protecting the existing tree canopy. And if it's a new development, we need to make sure that we're planting each trees in an area that, in a way that actually can allow for their success, right? We're not just putting a poplar in, that's going to go really quickly, not provide much actual canopy cover, that kind of thing, and then it dies off in a couple of years. One thing that I keep coming back to, tree canopy is super important, but we are also in a grassland area naturally. So when we are looking at planting these trees, when we're talking about these green spaces, I'm a huge fan of the naturalization. I did work with one of the current councillors that brought forward a notice of motion around the naturalization, roadside naturalization. I think it makes sense. It saves us money. It's promoting some of that really local and small scale biodiversity. But when we're talking about trees, we have to make sure that we're actually putting them in for success, areas that they can be maintained, that they can be watered, and that they can thrive, because otherwise it turns into that dead wood very, very quickly. So really prioritizing that. As far as the question that you were asking specifically, bird-friendly standards, there's building requirements that are provincial. We can lead the way and we can promote, whether that's etching on glass, whether that's bird-friendly patterned glass, or the stickers to help, allow the birds to see that the windows are there, as well as encouraging better lighting strategies for both our commercial and multifamily developments, right? So that, we have fewer bird impacts there. And then I think we do need to support, we need to make those investments. And again, I have advocated this behind the scenes and publicly, that we need to make investments into the infrastructure that keep wildlife and people safe. Whether that's wildlife fencing along core areas, like thinking about the ring road, and one of the most challenging things to see was the Southwest Ring Road going through some of the most pristine areas and wetlands in the area, and just kind of straight on through with very little. Anyway, that's a different discussion. But making sure that if we are encroaching in that area, we need to make these spaces safe. Wildlife corridors are a really tricky thing, because we can talk about squirrels and bunnies, but when we start talking about a larger interconnected thing, we have a big patchwork. We have some large areas that I think we really need to protect and prioritize. The patchwork of a lot of our parks, they are not naturalized in many ways, so they are more of these manicured green spaces, right? I would like to see more of the Confederation Park style, where we've got, it's also natural infrastructure there. It does flood. It's designed to. That whole area is meant to flood. But where we've got some more of the natural system protection in there as well, really prioritizing the protection of that. And then, are there locations where we could promote underpasses or overpasses for wildlife? I think that's absolutely something to explore. But yeah, we have got lots there. We just need to enforce it.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard from you, Mike, that you see an opportunity to build those wildlife corridors out, make sure that even the sides of roads are being used in that renaturalization focus. Build those small forests, like you said, not just seeing a tree die on its own, but a forest that will sustain that whole system. Making sure that there's connectivity between these things so that wildlife can move through our city. And Anthony, you brought up that you're not a fan of forced mandates, that you want to incentivize, that you're against retrofitting, rather you'd like to tear down and rebuild. And then from you, David, I heard hold developers accountable to what they are supposed to be doing in terms of returning that natural, or the tree canopy that was there. That grassland, we have to think about us being a grassland, and that there is places that trees shouldn't go. We talked about this in Ward 3, actually. There's places in the valley where trees will actually inhibit bird habitat. So yeah, making sure that bird-friendly standards are incorporated or encouraged. Education around that, I feel like I'm learning in this process. And that infrastructure to make sure that we keep wildlife safe when we think about building out infrastructure and preserving those wetlands. Okay, next question. And we'll go to you first, Anthony. So what steps will you take to ensure housing, rent, and transit in Calgary are affordable and accessible so that more Calgarians can access services with dignity and live and work in a healthy city? Thank you. You're on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, it's our job to make sure that all of our services that we provide to our constituents and our citizens is affordable to everybody. We leverage funding from provincial and from federal to make sure that the municipal level is taken care of there. We have to look at what we are spending our money on currently, the investments that we are currently making, and see what is generating revenue and see what is costing us unnecessary revenue. A lot of this, in terms of affordability, whether it's housing, whether it's transit, a lot of it is just responsible planning, making sure that we're staying within our budget, making sure that we are not overshooting what our wheelhouse is, and we are focused on municipal duties. I think we have this habit of overtaxing because we can't balance our budget, and we have to. I understand it's difficult. You have to account for inflation and population growth, and all of that is going to be a burden financially on the people planning the budgets. But I think with responsible budgeting, and if we're not overshooting our wheelhouse and we're just staying within our lanes, that we can, put ourselves in a path where we're able to make better investments. We're able to stay within our budget there, and we're able to lower the prices on whether it's parking, whether it's housing, whether it's transit. These things don't need to go up every single year for tax hikes for no reason, just because we couldn't manage to balance our books. We have to focus on what our constituents put us in place for, and that's to handle municipal responsibilities. When we start overshooting that and we start going for projects that are outside of what it is that we're looking to do in terms of our responsibilities, then we're going to overspend and we're going to take unnecessary risks that I don't think we need. I think if we focus on responsible spending, I think we focus on what it is our wheelhouse implies us to do, then I think we can reduce our budget and reduce costs for living and costs for transit.
Great. David, can you go next, please?
Absolutely. When we talk about building a sustainable city, a climate resilient city, we need to look not just at the environment, but we need to look at sustainable finances and social sustainability. Right? I've written about this on a number of occasions. Recently, I put out an op-ed in the Herald talking about the need to look at this, intersectionally. These things are intersectional. You can't separate housing, rent, transit, and affordability from the environment. They're one and the same, right? So I also acknowledge then that this is a very complicated question to answer and touch on in 2 minutes. So I'll race through a few things. Our housing and transit are kind of the key pillars of a healthy, equitable, and climate resilient city. These are core pieces of my platform, core pieces of why I'm running. We need to address the housing crisis that we are facing. We need to look for missing middle. We need to look for that gentle density that allows more people to move into neighborhoods, making them more vibrant. But we also need to provide the services that go along with that, whether that's transit, whether that's programming, whether that's recreation facilities, the things that whether it's small commercial spaces. Another piece of my platform is trying to make these neighborhood scale things a reality, right? So that we don't necessarily have to drive out to the Y at the edge of the city to go swim, like a lot of Ward 7 residents have to now, right, for swim lessons. So we need to address our housing affordability strategy, right? We've got a really good roadmap that's been put in place. We need a champion for that. We need to strengthen, from an affordability perspective, we need to strengthen our tenant support services, right? And looking at provincial partnerships to try to really, leverage whether it's rent supplements or rent caps, protecting vulnerable Calgarians and making it so that they can get around and experience and live in our city with dignity, right? So that then gets to transit. We need to work on funding, our core transit network. We've got the route ahead plan that we have a pathway forward that we just need to fund. We need to make sure that we have the low income transit passes. We need these things that allow, all Calgarians to access the different services and things that they need in our city, you know, and making sure that we're building in such a way that again, they are close by, that they're proximal, right? Transit-oriented development's a really good, easy one. And then also, you know, again, more investment into our actual transit infrastructure, such as separated bus lanes, advanced signals, all these, you know, pieces of infrastructure that can actually make our transit system more reliable and robust.
Wonderful. Okay, Mike.
Yeah, great. So on the housing sort of side of things and affordability, this has been a huge issue that we've been hearing about at the doors, right? Rents going up, people sort of getting into mortgages in situations where they're constantly sort of underwater. It is, for most people, the largest purchase that they're ever going to make in their lives, and the commitments are long term, and so making sure that we bring in some more affordability on that front is something that the city can play a large role in. That can be both in terms of turning on sort of more availability of market rate housing. So this is sort of newer infill developments, making sure that those are quality level builds, so that people are getting into a house that is going to serve them for their lifetime, and serve their needs well, making sure that those developments are built in and around places where they can live vibrant and active lives, because there is transit connectivity, because there are grocery stores, because there are the things that support a life that you can live locally and affordably, because those things go hand in hand. We also need to be looking at things on the non-market side of housing. So this is affordable housing that's being provided maybe by the city or with city partners, but that's also non-market housing in terms of things like co-ops or land trusts or these kinds of partnerships with local not-for-profits. We have not built a new co-op in this city in over 50 years. And this is a huge way that the city can start to tackle affordable housing by providing a wider range of options in the ways in which people live. On the getting around side of things, I've been a transit advocate for a very long time. I actually, advocated alongside groups like the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good and Climate Hub when the low-income transit pass was first coming about, and then was recently also losing funding from the provincial level. This is a very important form that the city is providing, the Fair Entry program, to make it transit accessibility, recreation within our city more affordable, especially to the people poorest in our society. But beyond that, I think there are ways we can also make these systems more affordable, just more broadly. So, for example, I'm a big advocate for fair free transit and what that can potentially do to bring about more use of transit infrastructure, get more people riding, and overall just create a larger focus on investing in the things like the reliability, frequency, and investments that we need in terms of transit. I was part of the advocacy efforts with the last council to raise fair free transit up to 12 and under for kids. And I would like to extend that up to 18 and under, as I believe we can actually make transit more affordable for families on the whole, get more families to use the transit system. And this has a snowball effect, right? Where as you get more people riding, it makes it easier to justify the investments that come in. And that's how we sort of turn things around and really amplify and make transit more affordable and more accessible for people across the city.
Wonderful. Lots of good stuff here. So from you, Anthony, I heard you want responsible planning to stick within municipal duties, make better investments in the city. And with that focus, you think that you'll make sure that projects stay within budget. David, you see that building sustainably means that you have to look at all the intersections of things together. So housing and transit and affordability are all, and the environment are all interconnected and cannot be thought of individually. Do you think it's critical that we look at the equity and affordability for housing, making sure that the missing middle is represented represented, that transit and small commercial sites are thought of in all of these new developments, that there's tenant supports for people, and that transit is accessible for low-income individuals, and it is more distributed around the city. Okay, and then from you, Mike, I heard that you also agree that rent and mortgages need to be, this is front of mind for people, and that this is a big stress, and that we do need to make sure that the market rate is considering the limits of the people in Calgary, that services are a focus for communities to make sure that there is that feeling of community for each area. Co-ops and land trusts, this is something that I think Calgary really should look at. And also that making sure that there is free fare even for transit, not just low fare, but free fare potentially for people up to the age of 18, making sure that families are using that service. Okay, next question, and I guess I'll lead with, I think I met David. So NMAX. NMAX is wholly owned by the City of Calgary. What role do you see for NMAX in helping the city achieve its 2035 clean electricity goals? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great question, and there's been a lot of discussion, with NMAX specifically, but also talking about EPCOR on the water side in Edmonton, and whether or not that, that model. I think the NMAX model allows us some really unique opportunities. So I'll also disclose that I have worked, or I've collaborated with the city and with NMAX to make the Telespark solar car park a reality. So that was a few of us that got together and said, hey, wouldn't this be a good idea, and managed to actually get buy-in from the City of Calgary, from Telespark, from NMAX, and again, now it's producing, I don't quote me on it, but I think it's about 70 to 80% of the annual electricity needs for Telespark. So all that being said, I know that NMAX can kind of use its weight and its capacity to really advance renewables, clean energy goals. So I think we should be pushing NMAX. They are arm's length from the city in a sense, so the city can't dictate what they do, but we can push, and we can say, hey, this makes a lot of sense. Please consider this, in at the end of the day. With regards to new local energy projects, they do have some initiatives that help fund, say, solar panels on community association buildings, energy retrofits. They have done a bunch of that. I took advantage of a lot of those when I was community association president. But really trying to leverage that and like really going in on that. All of our city-owned assets, I think, with the support of NMAX, should have solar generation or local micro generation associated with it. We've got the spaces we need to be leading. I have proposed, one of the things I proposed is a funding model for the solar farm generation, again, based off of what was done at the Telespark solar farm, where a certain portion of the revenues that come from that, Telespark purchases the energy through a power purchase agreement, and they're paying money for it. A certain amount of that money should be set aside to do the feasibility, to do the beginnings of the implementation of future solar projects. That could be managed by NMAX. That could be managed by the Federation of Calgary Communities. Honestly, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but just taking that money, reinvesting it, and having NMAX as a collaborative partner, right? They are the ones managing the local grids and kind of the tie-ins with the local grids. So we would need NMAX to be really a big part of that. We need to work with NMAX to look at battery technology. There's such rapid advances in energy storage. Is NMAX leading the way on this? Should they be looking a little bit more into this so that we have, again, that resilience within our electrical grid that allows renewables to become, the default option? And then, our dividends, we saw this last year, we saw substantial dividends. That should be used for green energy investments, right? We shouldn't be relying on that to fund our core services like recreation, which is what happened this year. We should be taking those, we should be reinvesting that into green energy, whether that's rebate systems for residential, for heat pumps, hot water tanks, all that stuff. Like, we have an opportunity from those dividends to really move us forward on that. So yeah, I hope that covers it.
Yeah. Mike, please.
Yeah, those dividends and that sort of like buying power that that NMAX has is a huge opportunity for transformation of our local energy system, right? As we move into the future, electricity, green electricity, but providing just electricity en masse in efficient ways requires a strengthening of our grid, distributed systems across our city, and NMAX plays a key role in delivering that. So we have a very healthy partner in NMAX in delivering energy in the city, right? They are bringing money in, they are bringing dividends to the table, they are funding things like community activations and these kinds of things through these dividends. But channeling those efficiencies into the future of what our system looks like is critical. So this is investing in these green power generation, both at local small scale levels by bringing in things like solar panels onto community association buildings. The piece that David talked about, like these kinds of using our parking lots, using the vertical space in our parking lots. These are fantastic ways to not spread out, but to use our space efficiently in the inner city and deliver power more locally. And it also, at the same time, attacks affordability, right? Part of the affordability picture for people in Calgary is their utility bills. People's utility bills continue to climb. It's one of these things, right? Our food prices are going up, our housing prices are going up, our utility bills are going up. And so by investing in green infrastructure, green energy infrastructure, we can have the long-term plan of not just tackling our responsibilities to climate and a greener future, but at the same time tackling affordability for the people that need it most. We can also be bringing in some of these programs to make sure that the efficiencies that are made at an NMAX level are invested for those struggling with poverty in our city, making utilities less of a burden on their day-to-day life.
Wonderful. Anthony, your last, please.
Yeah, I think NMAX should get more credit actually for doing the work that they have been doing to help out with the environment. Like I don't think they get enough credit for some of the things that they've done. They've integrated renewable energy technologies like solar and wind. They've invested. I think David mentioned it. In technologies like battery storage, right? That's also very important. I don't think they get enough credit for that. They're exploring carbon capture, which I believe helps reduce emissions. NMAX is one of those companies that's been around for so long. We kind of take them for granted because we just kind of see them, every day. But they do a lot of really good work for the community. They help people reduce emissions, and I believe are they like the first company I think they're the first company that implement the hybrid natural gas and battery storage plant to improve grid stability. I think they're one of the first companies in Canada to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they've always had a lot of environmental initiatives from the get-go. They still do. They do have a lot of future planning to help with that. I believe they're in the process of electrifying their own their vehicles. They're piloting electric medium duty trucks and developing long-term plans for mobile fleet electrification. So they're already doing a lot of really positive steps that a company could do, should they want to go green and to help with the environment. And I think NMAX should actually get a little more credit in terms of what they've already done. Could a company do more? Of course, you can say that with any company, but I would like to give NMAX a lot of credit for the work and the initiatives and the investments that they have made to help us out, because they have done a lot for the environment and for green initiatives.
Wonderful. Okay, so from David, I heard that this TeleSpark initiative. Thank you for doing that. That's a wonderful initiative. 70 to 80% of their annual needs. That's incredible from one small project. It's just shows the power of this power, if you will. Can they use their weight more? Yeah. So the idea is to make sure that all of the facilities, all of the assets that the city owned are equipped with solar and battery storage. I'm glad that you brought up the energy storage opportunity that the city has, and the opportunity for NMAX to get after that for us. Mike, you both brought up the dividends and this buying power and this reinvestment into green technology. And Mike expanded on saying that helped to especially target it towards lower income folks that need that affordability piece considered. Strengthening the grid you brought up too, Mike, and making sure that it is a healthy partnership, that we are honoring that partnership, and you investing that into the future, and using our vertical capacity where we can, in those open spaces like parking lots. Anthony, yes, you're right. NMAX has done a lot to move Alberta forward, and we should give them a lot of credit for that. I actually didn't know that they're investing their fleet in electric vehicles. That's wonderful to hear. And yeah, looking at like integrating renewables and battery storage and grid stability, all of those things are really important to make sure that we have clean energy in the future. Okay, so we'll lead into the next one. Mike, I'll let you lead this one, and then I'll go to you, David, and then you, Anthony. So how will you advance sustainable water use and watershed protection in Calgary's growth and development decisions? Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I talked a bit about this earlier, but places like Confederation Park, right? These natural waterways, we have to think not just about the bow, but all the catchments that lead to the bow, right? Water is a system. It is the veins of the earth, right? Sort of flowing through, and we need to make sure that the way that the water can sort of move through and get into our waterways is done well, is done in a way that can protect from, build a more resilient way to store and take care of the cleaning of this water before it dumps into our waterways, and just overall look at it as like the health of the water ecosystem en masse, not just in our river valley. Beyond that, we can be looking at things like how we're doing our storage. So this can be groundwater storage. This can be things like tanks that get built as part of our larger developments to store water on site and slowly release it out. So we're mitigating against risks of flood and the effects of sort of the climate playing a larger and larger role in our world, and the storms that we're having that come along with that. We're seeing much more sort of highs and lows, right? In terms of water availability, water flows. It's not a stable of a through line. And so trying to mitigate some of the highs and lows, both. So on the high side, that is that storm retention or whatever, but there's actually a broader piece with sort of the lows and just the long-term risks of potential like water scarcity, whether that can be infrastructure, because we lose our water pipes and we have to use water in more efficient ways, which is not necessarily a bad thing, learning how to use water in more efficient ways. But just on the whole, how do we not use our sort of filtered and treated waters in the same ways going forward? How do we treat it as the scarce sort of resource that it is? So where are the incentives and protections to make sure that we're putting back into the system as much as we are taking out? And this is working both within the city of Calgary, but on a regional basis to coordinate sort of wider water stewardship that recognizes the importance of water in our daily lives and the lives of, all life in the area.
Awesome. Okay, David.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. You almost teed that up for me. Calgary has an incredible watershed protection team. And most people don't actually know that they don't operate just within the city. So they are doing, their watershed stewardship and watershed protection teams are looking upstream of Calgary. They're working in the Ghost. They've got data collection that they do up there for water quality. Calgary actually supplies a huge amount of the drinking water and wastewater treatment for many of our surrounding neighborhoods. or communities, I should say, rather. And watersheds don't care about municipal boundaries, right? Because of this, we need to work really closely with the extensive nonprofit groups, whether that's Bull River Basin Council, whether that's the Elbow River Watershed Partnership, whether that's, you know, Calgary River Valleys. Sorry, I shouldn't bias that a little bit, but, you know, regardless of the group, there's a huge amount of capacity and work going on in those different organizations. We need to make sure that they are, you know, working together and we're supporting them in that way. We need to then also work with the province. We've got, you know, and upstream municipalities to make sure that we're doing source water protection. That's huge, right? There's a big discussion that I weighed in on at council about a marina at Bear's Paw, right? Should we be allowing motorized use or anything like that on our source water, on our drinking water, right? The logical answer would say no, right? We want to protect these systems. We want to make sure that the land use, again, around our rivers, around our reservoirs and our lakes, we want to make sure that we are protecting that as much as possible. We have again, I sound like I'm singing the praises. It's because I work with a lot of them so closely. Like, there's a great water education team and efficiency team at the City of Calgary. We actually met our 2030 goals for water use efficiency reduction, or I guess, sorry, water use reduction, water use efficiency before 2030. Like, we actually were ahead, mostly due to the excellent work of the education team. So getting back, Jenny, as you were saying before about education being a big piece on this, right? We also then need to invest in repairing and modernizing our wastewater and water systems, right? We've got to reduce that loss. We do have the big number that everyone's talking about, which I'm excited about because I was talking about it for a while before, but I'm glad that everyone's talking about it now, as like that 25%, 22% loss of treated drinking water. We've got some of the best pipeline companies and engineers, you know, in the world here. We should be able to build a good pipe that's not, you know, that's not leaking everywhere. That's investing in new technologies to monitor, evaluate, and again, it gets back to this financial sustainability, right? If we have, you know, the tax base, if we have the population in an area, it becomes much more reasonable. It becomes much more, you know, financially viable to replace these things before they catastrophically fail. The other piece that I think was briefly touched on is, you know, stormwater reuse. The water reuse legislation in the province has taken a very long time to, forgive the pun, percolate through, let's put it that way. You know, allowing the stormwater capture that in communities, all the new communities do have to have on-site stormwater capture. You know, allowing that to be used for a wider range or a greater percentage of it to be used for, say, irrigation for gray water uses, essentially, right? So flushing of toilets, that kind of thing. And then if I can just do one last thing, we have a lot of local, again, we come back to this development. We are required by right, or by definition right now within the development, to have local stormwater capture and handling if it's over a certain number of units. So really, again, enforcing and making sure that design is done well.
Wonderful. Okay, Anthony.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to, you know, things I was saying earlier in terms of giving incentives to corporations, to business, and people that are you know, using water responsibly and they're not overdoing. I'd love to do that. I'd love to find programs where I can incentivize more companies to, you know, to do that. So I'm not forcing them, but I'm rewarding them for going down that initiative there. Calgary does have some of the best builders, some of the best engineers, you know, in all of Canada, if not the world there. You know, we need to do these guys and girls a favor, cut the red tape, you know, get rid of bureaucracy, build the things that need to be built to help prevent flooding, whether that's water storage or stormwater reserves or what have you. And we also need to, you know, focus on infrastructure and maintenance. We need to make sure that we are maintaining what we currently have to make sure it doesn't fall apart. And when possible, modernize it as much as humanly possible throughout any sort of system that we have right now when it comes to old construction. You know, our city is an old city. You know, it's not a brand new, it's been around for a while there. There's a lot of buildings in there that are old that could use a modernization. And I think it will be better to to do that than again to retrofit, because we can add things that we didn't have before. And you know how much the city needs parking. You know how much the city could use more park areas. I would love to see more park areas there, right? So again, modernizing would be important for me on that issue, making sure that we are doing our responsibilities, and that is maintaining infrastructure, and making sure that we're focused on that. And then again, just cutting bureaucracy and getting rid of the red tape, and enacting that as fast as possible, so that we can actually get the results that we want in a reasonable time, so we're not waiting for things to get settled, because sometimes these things take forever, and we need to be more efficient with that.
Wonderful. Okay, lots of great things in here. So from Mike first, I heard that we need to think about water as that system, think about all the areas, the catchments, not just the main, rivers and streams that we have here. Make sure that we're protecting and storing and cleaning that water before it gets back into the system in the best way possible from that natural investment. Increasing groundwater storage capacity, making sure that we're acknowledging the extremes that we're seeing in terms of water accessibility, and planning for those scarcity, the water scarcity that we are facing, getting into that water reuse, making sure that we are, using what we are using as best as possible. And David sort of carried that on with talking about the watershed protection team and watershed education, working upstream, understanding that we need to look at where our water is coming from and protecting it, and not building around it, if you will, not misusing it upstream. Making sure the watershed councils and these great nonprofits that we work with at CARE are included in these discussions, and that they're valued. Those responses are valued and incorporated in the city's decision making. Wastewater losses, addressing all of that. Yeah, to bring up that, I didn't realize the comparison between Edmonton and Calgary, the losses that we're seeing in Calgary. It is surprising that, a city that gloats about, I'm from the oil and gas industry, being able to build pipelines. We should be able to do that well here. But it's also, like you said, David, this intersectionality piece, because once you reinvest in the city in certain places, you have that tax base, which then gets you that money for that fixing of those old pipelines. So, and then lastly, from Anthony, talking about incentivizing, again, making sure that we're using water responsibly, cutting red tape, making sure that infrastructure is being maintained, and that we're modernizing as much as possible. Okay, last question, guys. We've done so well here. So yeah, I'll let you lead this off. I think it's David's turn. I'm not sure if I have this in the right order, but that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, so how will you ensure recommendations from Calgarians, including residents, frontline communities, environmental groups, and city staff, are meaningfully considered in council decisions? Perhaps you've already gotten into this. Thanks.
Maybe I should have, looked ahead and made sure that I didn't cover that off earlier. No, again, I'm probably a little bit biased on this. I've been working shoulder to shoulder, and in the trenches, in the creeks, maybe we should say, with a lot of these different community organizations, both on boards and just through volunteering and through my community-based research and advocacy. For a long time. As I mentioned, and you just kind of touched on in the last question, we really need to leverage and utilize the skills and the expertise of these. The energy, I should also say, from local community members, organizations, and advocates. Unfortunately, I think we've seen underutilization of that in some ways. Especially volunteer members of boards and commissions. The biodiversity committee, unfortunately, was recently kind of shuttered, but they weren't really empowered to begin with, right? They were given a little bit of runway to talk to council, but not really any sort of formalized response process or say in any of the discussions. So I think we really need to beef that up. We need to acknowledge that there's a lot of local expertise, a lot of local knowledge, and again, a lot of local energy in these areas, in these community groups especially. So bringing them to the table, we need to make sure that these dialogues don't stop, right? That we have these conversations with, whether it's members of the CERT, right, which is a fairly new, organization, among multi-organization collaborative. How do we get administration, CERT members, other nonprofits, community groups, and then council all sitting at the same table so that we can have these, informed discussions so that everyone is aware of what's going on, but also so that we can utilize that local knowledge. And that's, a core value of mine is bringing the expertise to the table, right? I'm not going to be an expert in everything, so I rely on the local knowledge and expertise, both of administration and community groups. So really keeping that going at the city, I think is absolutely critical.
Fantastic. Anthony, you're next, please.
Yeah, we have to do more to reach out and hear what our constituents are saying, getting their feedback, their concerns, and everything. We put all this effort getting voted, getting nominated, getting our, getting into City Hall. Then all of a sudden when we're there, it's like we're hard to get hold of. It can't be that way. We have to put the exact same amount of effort, getting nominated as we do being in it and passing, all these bills and stuff. Like we have to make sure that we're getting feedback from our constituents because they're our boss. Like they're the ones that decide if we stay in that office or not, right? So we need to hear them. This is one of the main reasons why I'm against blanket rezoning is because, again, we can't have the people in City Hall make these big decisions that impact communities without directly addressing those communities and hearing their concerns, right? And giving them something in return for those buildings. Like there have been so many issues that I hear when I was getting my nominations from so many different areas of people that are saying, we feel unheard of. We feel neglected. Our voice wasn't heard. They're building all of these things here. I didn't want that. Nobody wanted that. And you cannot give, the city council that much, leeway to just do that without even talking to those residents, without talking to those communities, without getting their feedback and concerns and getting them heard and making sure they get a fair deal out of this. That's irresponsible. It's not fair. And we need to do better, right? I want to be as available and accessible as humanly possible, within rational limits to my constituents to be questioned. I don't want to have carte blanche. I want my constituents to be, why are we doing this? What is the benefit? I want them to grill me. They should. They have every single right to do that, right? So again, these people, we need to do more to get out there and get feedback and see what we're doing, what needs to be done better, and what they want, because what they want is what we're in office for, is to give them that. So if we can't make ourselves available for that, we shouldn't hold that position at all.
Okay, Mike, your last, please.
Yeah. So my last role at the library was on the innovation team, and we used a process called design thinking, which really forefronts empathy work at the beginning of making changes or designing for problems. Right? You do your empathy work, then you define the problem, then you go into ideation and sort of work in that form. And something I've heard a lot of frustration with at the doors, but have seen even play out in my community in Banff Trail here, has been this sort of push and pull, and people sort of feeling that the engagement that is they're being brought into is coming in later in the process when they don't feel like their voice can necessarily be heard and influence the outcomes because they're being proposed options. And I want to say too, at the same time, I know that the engagement team at the city has been doing a ton of work to modernize the way that they're doing things, to bring in more engagements, different forms like online surveys and online meetings. They're doing partnerships with local community groups, trying to make things more engaging and to actually push it out in terms of a more inclusive set of voices that are being brought to the issue. So we need to recognize that work is being done. I think the city has recognized that there is a need there that needs to be addressed. And it is just to continue to further that, right? Make sure that the city staff have the resources that they need to run effective engagement processes. Because when you get an actual dialogue to take place, it can actually inform people at the same time as how we can learn from it. We can make better decisions from it. There's so many benefits that come out of a strong engagement process that brings people along and incorporates their ideas. We get the creativity, the innovation of different perspectives, this is a big part of why you need more inclusive engagement with like a wider set of people, is that people have different ideas that they can bring and different perspectives. And when you're hearing all of those different perspectives, you can make a much better, more sound decision about the outcomes that we're making decisions on.
Wonderful. Oh, wow. This was fantastic, guys. I think in the interest of time, I'll let you, instead of me giving some more reflection, I'm just going to let you each offer some final takeaways for voters. Mike, I know you just spoke, but I want to let you, in fairness, in terms of going first, do you mind leading us off in some final takeaways for voters, please?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Mike. I'm running as an independent candidate here in Ward 7. And I strongly believe in sort of local grounded leadership that is sort of focused on the needs and the people of Ward 7. That's why I'm running as an independent. I'm sort of focused on bringing the progressive values that I see in my neighbors and in this community to the forefront at City Hall. This includes, everything from how we live and where we live, to how we get around, to living in a vibrant and active city. Those are sort of the three buckets that I think that the city really focuses on in terms of the decisions that we're making. And that piece of environment that we've been talking about today really cuts through all of those areas. How we get around, obviously investing in the things like transit and active modes of transportation, housing, making sure that what we're building is energy efficient, that respects the environment, and investing in things like vibrancy in terms of our parks that both create natural ecosystems and allow for a better outcomes in terms of biodiversity and our planet, but also are great for mental health and just general enjoyment of the city that we all live in. So that's the vision that I'm hoping to bring forward to City Hall. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Anthony, you're next, please.
Yeah, so my name is Anthony Askew. I am with a Better Calgary Party. I am running for City Council Ward 7. I would be the conservative choice for Ward 7 there. I'm looking to just get back to fundamentals and just focus on the things that matter, which is our municipal duties. That's responsible spending, keeping our streets safe and clean, making sure our waste management and all our environmental programs are running as efficiently as humanly possible. And I want to do it without going over budget. I want to focus on the things that matter to hardworking people in our city, in our ward, and I want to make sure that their tax dollars are being spent wisely in investments that make sense for them. I want to support local businesses. One of the reasons that the main reason that I ran was to be able to do that. I don't feel that the city is doing enough to support our entrepreneurs and our local businesses, and I just don't think that we're doing enough to really help that economy. And I think we can do a lot more to promote and support financially local businesses there to help grow that, because I have a business and I have an office downtown, and one of the things that I hate the most is seeing my friends and their businesses close down. Month after month, I see vacancy, and I see this store shutting down, this coffee shop shutting down, this restaurant shutting down, this little knick-knack shop shutting down, and it hurts. And they're just not getting supported, and that needs to change. We need to inspire entrepreneurs to create, to provide, to give our city a sense of life and economy. And we're not going to do that if we don't support them. Starting a business is scary. It is absolutely scary. A lot can go wrong, and oftentimes very few things go right. There's a big risk to it, right? So I want the people to know that if they make an investment and they start a business in the city, that the city is going to make an investment in them. My campaign is very, very simple. It's back to the basics. Focus on what needs to be done to make sure our city's profitable, to make sure that our citizens are safe, that they're not overtaxed and overburdened with finances that are caused by us through irresponsible spending. And I want to make sure that we can do that in a timely manner by cutting a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. I hope that people get that, and I hope that the city of Calgary and the constituents of Ward 7 want strong conservative leadership to be back in City Hall.
Okay, David, take us home.
Absolutely. I'll start just like you guys said. My name is David Barrett. I'm running as an independent for Ward 7. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to chat today. It's just incredible to be able to have these conversations. We've been having, I've seen Mike and Anthony a whole bunch of times. We've been having conversations on, a whole range of different things. And every time we sit down, I learn something either from Anthony and Mike or from who's hosting us. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm also really impressed, Jenny, with your note-taking and summarizing capabilities. I could never do that. Anyways, so a key reason for me stepping forward to run is because we need change, right? What we've been doing is not working on so many levels, right? From an affordability level, from an environmental protection level, from just a financial sustainability level, right? We need an advocate around the city council table that is focused on using data and making good decisions, both for the environment and for our city and for our neighborhoods. I'm running both because of my lived experience in advocacy and community building, but also because I'm looking at the city and neighborhoods that will be leading for the next generation. The folks that I work with, that I teach and I interact with at the University of Calgary, what are we leaving to that generation? What are we leaving to, to my kid who's 6? And are they going to be able to afford to live and thrive in the city like I've been able to? We need to invest in making our Ward 7 neighborhoods more sustainable and across the city, right? We need them to be more vibrant. We need them to be more accessible and safer. As I've already mentioned, decisions around city building is absolutely intersectional with environment. You can't take those things apart. So a vote for me is a vote for a more sustainable city, and I really hope to bring that vision and my expertise and background to the city council horseshoe.
Wonderful. Wow. Ward 7 is really lucky to have 3 people like you that have stepped forward. Thank you so much for your time, for appreciating the importance of this conversation. Natural infrastructure is something that we all need. So I really appreciate your time. Good luck to all of you, and take care for now.
Thanks very much, Jenny.
Okay, just quickly, I'm going to remind you guys that candidates are joining us to share their vision. Please use the QR code in the top right corner. Make sure that your candidates have submitted some answers. Send the letter to encourage your ward, to encourage them. Your impact is amplified by sharing this. The responses that I am receiving are being posted to my website, which is, oh my goodness, is here. And specifically, you can look for Ward 7 to watch this video and see the insights from these guys that they have provided me already. And lastly, please remember to like and subscribe to The Gravity Well. Together, we can build a resilient and healthy, sustainable Calgary for the future. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.